Hey everyone, Mark and Steve here.
Before we get started today, we want to let you know about Dare to Connect, our new online interactive video platform.
For less than the cost of a therapy session, you and your spouse get live access to both of us 3 times a week.
Each 30-minute live group support session provides interactive mentoring and healing for addicts, spouses, and couples.
If you're loving our podcast and our unique style of bringing you recovery, you're going to love Dare to Connect.
To learn more, go to daretoconnectnow.com. We're looking forward to seeing and working with you. Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast.
Hey, everybody, Mark and Steve on the PBSE podcast. Hey, we had a listener write in, and I could really relate to what you was sharing, Steve. And I know you can too, especially we take ourselves back to our heavy addiction days or even our early recovery days. Quite
walk
frankly.
Down memory lane.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, it's a walk down, right? It's like walk down memory lane.
I like it. I'm ready. I'm excited. Let's do it.
But here's what she describes. She's in a marriage. It sounds like she says her partner doesn't she doesn't believe he really does recovery at all. Sounds like he's kind of gone through the motions, kind of given it lip service. He's working with sounds like a CSAT therapist, but she says he doesn't really do what the therapist tells him to do. He doesn't go to his 12-step group. They've got filtering devices and monitoring devices or software on his devices. And here's the thing. So there's all these kind of half efforts. There's this sort of check the box, make it look like I'm doing something to get her off my back is what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
But he said something to her, and this is really around the central place of her question. He tells me that he no longer sees other women, doesn't even notice them in any way because his heart has changed. And her whole question to us was, how is that possible? Especially when I see that he's snuck little peeks at stuff on Spotify, like pulling up rock albums with half naked people, or right. She can tell that he's been checking out somebody's profile on a social media site where the person's in a bikini, or there's just all these signs that he's still looking, but he says he's not. He assures her that he doesn't do that anymore because his heart has changed. And her real question is this possible? Am I just crazy? Is he really sincere? And am I making assumptions that aren't fair of me? You can just hear her confusion.
Yeah.
And she really says, she says in the middle of it, I already know the answer. But is there the slightest chance that he really truly doesn't notice women?
Yeah. It's a great question, and we're going to answer it, I think, a little bit differently. We were talking about this before we started today, and I guess maybe we just give the really quick, direct answer to the question, Mark, and then we give the bigger, real, more pertinent answer. So, in some sort of realm of reality, is there a possibility where some man exists where he can go through the recovery process? And by the way, she says he still struggles with a lot of symptomology from addiction, right? Blame shifting, defensiveness.
Yep.
Talking mean, being mean, I think is what she says, not communicating. Is there some realm of reality where one can be truly in recovery, still exhibit those same symptoms, and also not truly ever notice any women? Like that somehow has just vanished?
No. I'm just going to say no. I'm
glad Mark just said, I don't think so either. Right. The chances are very, very slim to none. But I think that the more pertinent thing, and Mark and I, we kind of talked about this before we started this podcast, is is I think the real bigger question here is there some sort of realm of possibility with that? It's that regardless of whether that is even the case or not, clearly this relationship is not in good recovery, right? Clearly this relationship is still struggling, and clearly he is still struggling with a lot of the same symptomology and issues that he was with before, and that more work clearly needs to be done, right?
Well, and I want to this is going to be a little different. I want to speak to this guy for a minute.
All right,
And
all right.
anybody out there listening who's struggling with addiction, I want to speak to you for a minute. I can really get my arms around why this guy would tell her, "Hey, I just want you to know I don't notice women anymore."
Mm,
I would have said the same thing not that many years ago in my addiction and my early recovery, and it would have come from a number of places. And see if any of you guys listening can relate to that. First of all, I would know that if I would tell my wife that I would hope that it would reassure her so that she would feel safe, so that she would stop
mm,
getting on my case, and legitimately so that I would stop hurting her. So if I just tell her, hey, you know what, I just don't notice women anymore. My heart has totally changed. That is going to I'm going to have this idea in my brain that that's going to solve a lot of these issues with regard to this mess we're in because of my addiction and her trauma.
mm,
I may also say that because maybe there's a part of me that really wants to believe it's true, or maybe even believes it's true. And I'm doing a little better at not allowing myself to scan or gaze in public. And so I just, being an all or nothing addict, I just make the big declaration. I just don't do that anymore. Right?
mm.
Even though it's not really accurate. That's just an old habit of, making declarations. And maybe this was very much the case for me. If I just make that statement, then it gets to be a deflection to avoid hard stuff. I
Mm,
don't have to have hard conversations with my wife about it. I don't have to face my own bad habits from the past of gazing and, surveilling and doing all this stuff that I have done. I can just avoid the whole mess by just making this big old declaration. I don't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore.
yeah.
And what I'm telling myself and all you guys out there, if you allow yourself to take that approach with this or anything else like it, you are not helping yourself.
Yeah.
We keep ourselves stuck when we don't behave in a way that is authentic, transparent, where we show up and let others see us, where we tell the truth. And I mean this at all costs.
Yeah.
Right? Getting out of this place of deflection, of rationalization, of minimization, of taking the easy way out by throwing these big statements out, and instead facing our stuff. That's how
Mhm.
we can move forward. Guys, you owe it to yourselves and to your relationship to stop these old strategies that we learned when we were kids to deflect or stay away from hard stuff by throwing out these kinds of declarations. It doesn't
Yeah.
help us or anyone around us.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And obviously some things can be lost as semantics here, but agreed. And just to kind of expand on that, I mean, if we look at what a healthy recovery is like, I mean, I notice attractive women all the time. Mark, I'm sure you
Me
do as
too.
well,
I
right?
do too.
I mean, noticing beauty, noticing something is attraction. We talk about this often on the podcast. Attraction just is, right? We all gravitate to people, be it physically or emotionally for whatever reason, right? It isn't just a physical thing. We come across people in our lives of the same gender or opposite gender, right? Where we just for whatever reason we really get along with them, right? We just click. And that's just how life works. Where the line gets drawn is when we cross from that realm over from attraction or noticing people or whatever that may be into a lust-based realm, right? Where we're taking that attraction, we're using it in some sort of a way to numb out, to fantasize, to, disconnect from reality and from the commitments or people that we're committed to,
Yeah,
right? That's the world of
we use it to get an instant pleasure hit. We use it,
correct.
we use it recreationally, right? So noticing isn't the issue. It's what do I do with it once I notice?
Correct.
Because I'm going to, and I can own that. I own that with my wife, and she notices attractive people also. But
Yeah, I'm
yeah, but
absolutely.
but developing the skills and the tools and the intention of what to do with that in the moment, that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I talked to a client some time ago. Had this conversation more than once where this kind of thing came up, and we were having this discussion, and he was really vocalizing a desire or an idea that recovery meant. You truly just using that same verbiage, right? You don't notice anybody else in the world but your spouse. And I think what I told him, I'd worked with him for a while, but I think what I told him is this: I said, if you genuinely aren't noticing anyone, that might be an equally significant problem, right? If that truly is what's going on, I think that might be an issue as well. Being part of living life and being engaged in life is going to be is being present with one's emotions, one's feelings, and that is just a part of life. So that's
Well,
that.
yeah, and what would concern me about that, and I have run across a few cases over the years where somebody is truly, their strategy to stay sober is they don't allow themselves to see anyone.
Yeah.
They'll literally close their eyes through an entire public experience. Or they'll look at the sky the whole time they're walking, or they'll look at their feet and never allow themselves to engage with anyone because they're afraid of who they might see. Well, that's
Yeah,
a disconnected life. That's
absolutely.
that's the equivalent of living life in a cave or under a rock, right? You're trying to use extreme methods in order to save yourself from the hard work of facing reality in real life and developing the healthy skill set to cope with it, to be
Yes.
able to experience it without going to these old addiction behaviors. That's hard work. And we can use these avoidance techniques as a way to avoid hard work.
Yeah.
That's a big concern.
Oh, for sure. And obviously we had to summarize the submission that was sent into us was quite lengthy. And
It
so we had
was
to
yeah, it was
summarize
very
quite a bit.
long.
But she does list off, in kind of concert, this wife with concerns about her husband. She does list off again all these other kind of behaviors or attributes that used to accompany the addiction, right? So being sneaky, right? Blame
Mhm.
shifting, defensiveness. She's caught several times. She describes several times she's caught him utilizing devices to access social media platforms and things when he's committed not to, and has
Yes.
hidden that from her. It's only come to light when she has discovered it. He has a browsing history, online of, he when he listens to music, he will magically be, even I'm saying a little too sarcastically, but conveniently be listening to music with, album covers that have really scantily clad women on the front, and that seems to be the whole trend, right?
Mhm.
And all of these things, if you add these up, again, if we get away from that main question and we just look at probably what really needs to be asked here, whether or not he's noticing women probably and trying to discern whether he's telling the truth is probably less of the point, and more of the point is to say, regardless of what's going on there, again, clearly there is a lot of work to be done in recovery. A husband or a partner who is engaged in the recovery process is going to be one where, among whatever else, they're going to have the capacity to empathize, connect with, and then support a course of action that is in league with being aware of and connected with a partner's pain.
Yeah.
Right. And that is going to mean leading out in a lot of different ways, championing safety, right, in the relationship. Someone who is accurately involved in recovery is going to see where their line is, where they ought to not cross, and be 5 feet back from it. Right. They're going to, if one is truly in recovery, can we not give up, the 5 songs that we really like that happen to be sung by people with scantily clad albums online? If we're really serious into recovery, can we not be sincere and consistent in our efforts not to access social media? If we're really in recovery and we're willing to go to any length, can we not be making steps to progressively become better at taking the time to hear our partner, to connect with their pain, right? As Mark said, to be completely open and transparent, to be willing to see the other side of things without becoming defensive all the time, right? These are all attributes that come along when someone sincerely, truly does the real work of recovery. And the symptomology of one who is in recovery versus one who is out is pretty unmistakable. And that is really where the proof meets the pudding, so to speak.
Yeah. And the thing that concerns me about this particular guy being described is by engaging in these half measures, right? These half-hearted efforts, he's just keeping himself stuck.
Yes.
He's continuing on a downward spiral that's not going to end well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not fair to himself to just give this half-hearted effort, and absolutely not fair to his partner, to his wife.
For sure.
And the fact that she finds herself really honing in, focusing in, I guess you could say even a little bit of being obsessed with whether he's looking or not. You can just see that she's trying to find some safety in whether this is true or not. If it's true, then maybe there's hope. Maybe she's safe. And if it's not, then all is lost.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really the focus. The focus is, what does real recovery look like? What are the things that he should be engaging in? And can she learn to look out for her own health, healing, well-being, right? Her life, her state, her path. Does she have the support to be able to do that? And can she learn to set boundaries so that she doesn't just become an ongoing doormat, that she doesn't just continue to subject herself to what appears to be, pretty much a facade on his part, and begin to hold those boundaries and stand up for herself and speak her truth in a way that is, safe and productive and proactive and moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that attitude of proactivity, right, is something that, we've actually been ironically focusing a lot on our Dare to Connect program for addict spouses and couples. That seems to be one of the common themes that keeps coming up of late. When we talk about good recovery, that proactivity component, that leading out as a spouse and recognizing, I took a lot of action and contributed in a lot of inaction to get us to this point, and I'm going to lead out in this process to recreate safety that I've taken, right? To recreate a good environment for healing, and I'm going to proactively seek out, your comfort, your security in this process. We would love to have you guys, by the way, join us there. We've got a 2-week trial going on at Dare to Connect. You can check us out there at daretoconnectnow.com, where we tackle issues like that and many, many others on 3 times a week with our addict spouses and couples. But we, as we kind of, wrap up in our thoughts with this spouse, this wasn't even what was asked for in the submission, but speaking to the spouse here a little bit, definitely some looking and some examination, I think, based on what you submitted and in examining your boundaries, and maybe some recommittal to those, and what you're willing to accept and not, and how you hold those boundaries would just be a good thing to go back and revisit. Maybe that's already something you're in the process of doing. But I think Mark and I would both say that, life is too short, eternity is too long, and therapy is too expensive to do any of those things half-assed. So.
Well, and this is going to sound strange, but in kind of wrapping this up, I'm going to suggest that if I were knowing what I know now, and if I were in this man's shoes, I would encourage him to take a completely radically different approach to this. I wouldn't tell my wife, you know what, I never notice women anymore. Just wanted you to know that. Unless that was absolutely squeaky clean true, which I just don't think it is, unless it's a really unhealthy avoidance strategy. Yes. I would say, you know what, sweetheart, I do still struggle sometimes with kind of scanning in public, but I want you to know that this is what I'm doing. These are the tools I'm using. These are the strategies that I'm following in order to do better at that. In fact, just yesterday, I found myself at the mall and I started to notice that I was starting to scan, and here's what I did. Here's what I did that pulled me out of it, and it was really cool. I had success. That's the kind of transparency and authenticity that I would encourage guys to have. You say, well, I can't tell her that because it'll ruin everything. No, it will actually be one of the biggest deposits to the trust account that you can imagine, that you are honest, you let out with that transparency, and then you describe the plan that you have to make better choices in those settings and how you've been using it and what the result has been. That is massive. That's what I would suggest we do with regard to honesty and authenticity, not this, big declaration that I never, ever, ever do that anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Excellent point. Living in a world where you're standing in the light, you're being open and honest, and we're and you're in a place of seeking active change. Maybe that's a good way to end, right? If anyone who is in a good place of recovery, for those who know, for those who've really done this process, for guys like Mark and I who have had to learn the hard way, recovery, quote unquote, never really, which is really healing. I know Mark likes that word better than recovery. We use that recovery word all the time. Healing is really an ongoing process, because when you really approach recovery the right way, it truly is a lifestyle change. And so it is working on and improving oneself in a way that goes far beyond therapy, far beyond the rooms of 12-step, far beyond any of those things, and really connects with the ongoing journey of seeking for better and better and healthier and more connected relationships.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Hope this has been helpful. And again, as Steve said, we hope to see some of you over at daretoconnectnow.com. Love what we do over there when we interact with all of our people, 3 times every week.
Absolutely.
But have a great day, and we'll see you next time on PBSE.
Sounds great. Have a good week, everybody. Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants, and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.